the learning zone. You get the education for all. Gyanwani, Gyanwani, education at your doorstep. It's only on Gyanwani.
I am Professor Vibhuti Patel, Head of the Department of Economics in Mumbai from SNDT Women's University. Women empowerment, now we have, right from 19th century, we have seen that the concern for women's development and women's empowerment was articulated by educated, enlightened man. With the whole history of 19th century social reform movement says that how person like Mahatma Jyotiba Phule or the establishment of SNDT Women's University by Maharshi Dondokeshwar Karve. These are the women, the men who have played a very important role. We acknowledge their contribution and we come to this whole discourse on women in development, women and development, and gender and development. These are the three approaches India has witnessed since 1975. There has been a coexistence of all these three approaches, because what is women in development? Women in development model explains the reasons for women being treated just as a beneficiary of the crumbs thrown at them who are in the margin of the economy. Women are just treating women only as consumer or an auxiliary labor force to be utilized in the crisis period and eased out whenever there is an economic, when men are ready to take over. So this approach treats that women are at the margin of the economy. We have to bring them into the process of development, and this approach is known as women in development. Esther Bostrup, an American anthropologist who was studying African economy, she found out that women were the main agents of food security in Africa. Men were taken as slaves to the urban centers to earn cash, because you have to pay your tax and tax can be paid only in cash. So it was the women's labor in agriculture which played a very important role, women and children. And what Esther Bostrup wanted to know was a polygamy in Africa, why African man had so many wives. And she found out that in African society there is no discrimination in food between man and women. Slavery always created more human misery for African men because they were away from their home. Women in Africa had a food security because they were managing agriculture, and the lifespan of African women was higher. In terms of height and body, African women are as strong as men. Most of the hardcore job of construction, agriculture done by women. Sex ratio was favorable to African women. In Africa, there are more women than men. And it is in this context, African society also accepted that women are workers. In Africa, nobody said that women did not work. Women always worked. So, if African man had more wives and more children, he could cultivate more land. He could look after more animals, because Africa did not have technology. Africa did not have even plow, which Indian civilization had. Even in Mohenjo-daro we have seen remnants of plow. So no technology was there. They had to do their agricultural work only through digging stick. So sheer human labor could bring food security in Africa. It is in that context that polygamy in Africa flourished. What Esther Bostrup wanted to know was polygamy in Africa. What were the reasons? There was something in genes of African man that they wanted more wives, or it was the socio-economic geographic reality which created a condition of polygamy in Africa. What Esther Bostrup wanted to know is a different issue, but what is the externality? In economics, for every action you have a positive externality, you have a negative externality. What is the positive externality of Esther Bostrup's study? That one thing she brought out, that don't treat women as a beneficiary of economy. Women are the main agent of the economy. The most subsistence agriculture is done by women, and this pioneering work of Esther Bostrup in 1972, Women in Economic Growth, forced world leaders to re-examine women's role in the economy. United Nations immediately sent a mandate to all 165 member countries to sign a charter on equality, development and peace. It demanded from the member countries status of Women's Committee report. India also came up with a status of Women's Committee report. First report concerning women being discussed in the Parliament of India in 1975. The report was called Towards Equality, and this report is guided by VID approach. Without theory, with theory is a tool which allows you to analyze the situation. So VID approach played a very, very important role in a 6th 5-year plan, because up to from first 5-year plan to 5th 5-year plan, women were clubbed among weaker sections and part of a welfare scheme of the government. From 6th 5-year plan, VID approach was adopted by Planning Commission of India, and we started having separate chapter called Women in Development. So that is, by mid-80s, we had a second approach called WAD approach, Women and Development approach. It was a person like Ila Bhatt who started SEVA. Ila Bhatt was working as a trade unionist in Textile Labour Union. In front of her, she saw that her male colleagues and mill owners of Ahmedabad, they decided that from textile mill sector was going for massive automation, mechanization and rationalization. The first casualty were women. When new machinery came, women were not given opportunity for skill development, and then they were told that you can't handle this complicated machinery, and they were retrenched. When women retired, they were replaced by their son and son-in-law. Now, for 3 generations, textile industry, right from last quarter of 19th century, had a history of replacing woman worker by her daughter or daughter-in-law. That changed. Ila Ben protested because suddenly, like in 5 to 7 years, more than 1 lakh women in Ahmedabad city were unemployed. And these women, they went to Ila Ben and she said, what shall we do? Our families will starve. And it was in that context, Ila Ben started Self-Employed Women's Organization. She questioned the VID approach. She says, what kind of development are we talking? The development is a pyramidal development where women are at the bottom of the hierarchy. The development process is completely bypassing and neglecting women. What we need is a self-mobilization of women. Ila Ben said, I had a dilemma whether to organize these women as a Mahila Mandal, Bhajan Mandal, voluntary organization, charitable organization, and she says, after a lot of thinking, I decided to register SEVA as a trade union, because I know that I am in the sea of patriarchy. My organization is a small little boat, and unless we are organized and unless we fight for our rights, so in trade union only will allow me to fight for my rights, but this would be a different type of trade union. This trade union will not do only strike and gerao, but it will work on a developmental constructive approach. So women's health, women's education, women's employment, creating alternate market, and the way in last 30 years SEVA has expanded its tentacles in terms of the action program. They have their own bank, they have their own heart, they have do forward and backward linkages, they have SEVA insurance, SEVA Vimu, insurance for women self-employed. So that approach, creation of alternative spaces for women for effective economic enhancement, is called WAD approach, Women and Development approach. WAD approach demands affirmative action from the state. So Ila Ben, when she was a member of Planning Commission, she said that what government needs, Planning Commission needs to come up with is a women's component plan. Within the plan, any anti-poverty program you have, 30% should be targeted directly to women. That came in 9th 5-year plan. In 9th 5-year plan, we also saw that women in Panchayati Raj 92, in 1993, Panchayati Raj Act came for all rural and urban local self-government bodies. 30% reservation was constitutional amendment 73rd and 74th. It made state governments responsible for implementing Panchayati Raj Act and women's participation and women's reservation in the local self-government body. So you have a state providing affirmative action, holding women's hand of poor marginalized women, and you also have a self-mobilization of women which allows them to give agenda setting power. Who will decide women's agenda? That women themselves should. That is the approach that Women and Development model talks about. By 1990, the realization came that, okay, you are organizing these women who are at the receiving end of the system, but you are organizing only powerless women. So what shall these powerless women do? They will come together, they will collect signature, they will give petition. It was also felt that we need to find our male allies. All men are not bad. All these cases of dowry murders come to women's organization. It is because of the kind brothers and fathers who bring who invite attention of women's organization to fight against their daughter's murder. So we need to find man in decision making power. They also need to be gender sensitized, and this gender and development model focuses its attention on the power relation. If there are subordination domination relationship, we have to, through this GAD approach, we need to create a gender justice and gender balance. Gender is socially constructed. All of us have a baggage of patriarchy. It is not men who are patriarchal. We women also have a baggage of patriarchy. Otherwise, how would a young mother abort her female fetus? How would a mother-in-law kill her daughter-in-law? She is a biologically woman, but still she considers daughter-in-law, who is the most powerless person, as a dispensable object. So it is very important to create understanding of gender issues. That means you examine any social problem with the gender analysis, whether it is providing, if a woman boss harasses a male subordinate, that also is a concern for gender GAD approach. What we want is a justice and equality between men and women, between different, within, if there is any domination on the basis of caste, class, race, religion and gender, it has to be challenged. Gender is a social construct, sex is a biological construct. We may be biologically different, but the gender relations can be changed with enlightenment, with public education, with intervention by the educational institution, by creating new kind of political structure. With one stroke of pen, we brought 1 million Indian women cross the threshold of domesticity and enter the area of governance. Okay, so this is possible. So explicit measures for gender inequalities such as sex ratio, literacy rate, health and nutrition indicators, wage differentials, ownership of land and property, they are the concerns of gender analysis. The implicit relations are those embedded in the relation of power based on religion, culture, intra-household inequalities. They result in unequal distribution of power or control over resources, decision making, dependence rather than self-reliance, and unfair and unequal distribution of work, drudgery and even food, because intra-household distribution of food is also based on what is your bargaining power within the family. Earning man member would get the best food, unemployed brother will be fed the leftover. The same way women and girls in the family would be eating the last list and leftover. So it is very important to understand gender, to understand economic behavior. The lesson number 1 in this module is on Introduction to Gender Studies, in which we are talking about what is women's studies, because gender economics has its origin in women's studies, and women's studies as an academic discipline is a science concerned about women's equality with man and development of women. It provides analytical tool and the worldview to understand status of women. It facilitates the process of understanding, recognizing and giving due importance to contribution made by women and men. It examines reasons for subordination of women, and it also supports the social action aimed at equality, development, peace and employment of women. The concepts in gender economics. First, the most important concept that we need to be clear about is a difference between sex versus gender. Sex is a biological term. Gender refers to the sex of the individual after socialization. Okay, sex refers to biological difference between man and women, and gender is a social construct that defines social relationship between man and women. Women belong to feminine gender because during the process of growing up, certain culturally constructed feminine traits are inculcated into women right from the birth. If you are a woman, you are asked to be subordinate. You should keep quiet. You should obey others. You should be doing housework. So these kind of attributes, allowing brother to study and asking sister to do housework, these are attributed only after her birth, the way she is being socialized. Another very important term in gender economics is oppression versus exploitation. Any form of dehumanization and degradation, violence and injustice, terrorization and humiliation, intimidation and threat, Subordination and discrimination is considered as oppression, while exploitation has an economic connotation. In a Marxian sense, it is an extraction of surplus labor over and above necessary labor that an individual does for his or her subsistence. Third important terminology in gender analysis and gender economics is socialization, which is defined as a process through which self acquires the rules, social recipes, conception of appropriate conduct, what is right and what is wrong, who is a good girl and who is a bad girl, knowledge of that allows them to act in their own socio-cultural political world. What should be the dress code? What is a good behavior? What is the label at which women should be pitching in terms of their career opportunities? What kind of courses that women should do? What time girls should come home? The whole double standard of sexual morality between men and women, they are transmitted through socialization. Gender socialization means the process by which individual is taught to internalize socially determined values of appropriate masculine trait or feminine trait. It is the process, and social construction is another very important terminology in gender economics. It is a process by which men and women are molded into the culture of the group and thereby become accepted members of group, community and society. Deconstruction and reconstruction, they are also very important terms in gender economics. They are analytical tools to examine individual unfolding capacity to complex forms of behavior and direct those capacities and to the new ethos to create new personalities. That means you deconstruct the patriarchal baggage and you reconstruct the new ethos of gender equality. In gender economics, these analytical tools are used to bring a change from gender-biased and gender-neutral attitude to gender-aware and gender-sensitive attitude. A most important analytical category is that of patriarchy. Patriarchy as a concept patriarchy is seen as an institution that perpetuates male domination and female subordination. Patriarchy sustains power relations that discriminate against girls and women in the household and in the economy. Patriarchy attributes quote-unquote private realm to women and quote-unquote public domain to men. Pillars of patriarchy are family, kinship network, state, religion and media. We can call them Panchamahabhuta. In patriarchal society, the line of inheritance passes from father to son, and that's why it is known as patrilineage. The patriarchal order is also patrilocal. That means after marriage, bride is expected to go to groom's residence. Now we come to the term called matrilineal or matriarchal institutions are known as a mother-centered institutions. In this system, the line of inheritance is from mother to daughter, and that's why we know the matrilineage. What we have in some northeastern states or in Kerala is not matriarchy, but it is matrilineage. Matrilineage is consistent with patriarchy because you may have law of inheritance from mother to daughter, but the management of property is done by maternal uncle in the matrilineage system of Kerala. So the patriarchy is still very, very strong. It is instead of a husband, it is the mama or maternal uncle who manages the property or who decides the fate of women and girls. After marriage, groom goes to bride's house. There are societies in which it happens, and that's why they are known as matrilocal societies. Some important terminologies in gender economics which are useful are related to trends in feminism. Feminism has a history of 200 years. When Mary Wollstonecraft wrote her first book on subjection of women, the liberal feminist trend was established because her book created ripples among the intellectual world. Those who focus on constitutional guarantees of equal treatment for men and women are known as liberal feminists. Those who locate women's subordination in the class contradiction are known as Marxist feminists. Third trend is that of a radical feminist who consider patriarchy as the main culprit for all problems of women. Socialist feminists, they believe that women's predicament are determined by complex interplay of caste, class, race, religion, ethnicity with patriarchy. So patriarchy's interplay with all these other forces that decide women's predicament. That is the understanding of a fourth trend called socialist feminist, which was quite popular in the pre-First World period. Hence the need for deconstructing patriarchy in a different socio-cultural, geopolitical and historical context. That's what socialist feminists believe. Another very important trend in feminism is that of a psychoanalytical feminist who focus on individual journeys of women to arrive at mental makeup and internalization of values by people concerned. That means your psyche, each and every one of us have our own childhood experiences, and we all have our baggages of experience which determine our future course. Psychoanalytical feminists critique Freud for its misogyny, but also acknowledge that Freud's analysis of childhood experiences playing important role in rest of the life is worth consideration. We have another very important trend, postmodern feminists, who contest hegemony of meta-theories, dominant discourses, and they say that most of these meta-theories and dominant discourses, they are patriarchal, and they start on the premise of subordination of women and male domination. The postmodern feminists, they bring to the fore voices of the subjugated, silenced, oppressed and marginalized women. They emphasize re-entering from the mainstream. So it is very important that you question the dominant discourse, male discourse, and bring to the fore knowledge of the voiceless. Another very important trend is that of ecofeminists who believe that women's role in the subsistence economy is crucial for survival of humankind. Women have symbiotic relationship with Mother Nature. Male-dominated development models are violent towards Mother Earth, and they are also violent towards women. And we need to question this model of development which believes in conquering and colonizing Mother Earth, and also ecofeminists see women and the poor women of developing country as the last colony, because now the earlier form of colonization is just not possible. All nation states are aware of their political independence. So for maintaining the super profit of world capitalism, you use women's bodies, control over women's sexuality, fertility and labor for super profit of the world capitalism. Another very important trend which is very, very vocal in the 21st century is that of a black feminist. In this, race is the central reality for black feminists. They question the patriarchy among black men, but they also have their doubt about universal sisterhood. This black feminists, they say that racism is as much a devastating reality for black women as the patriarchy, and that's why they need to challenge both patriarchal male domination and also racism. And white women are deriving the benefit of racism while the black women are at the receiving end, and that's why they see the color of the skin is very important in self-mobilization. The last trend in feminism is a womanist. Womanism is contribution of Afro-American feminists who believe that in spite of barbaric experiences of slavery, subjugation and horror for nearly 5 centuries in the human civilization, right from say 16th century to 21st century, the black culture, black celebrations, black cuisine, black food habits, black histories have survived due to women's resilience. There is a need to promote these celebrations and cultural legacies through heritage of oral history, legend, and grandmother's story. They believe that non-white and colored women must be proud of her stories instead of aping the white consumerist oppressive male culture. Another very important concept in gender economics is gender-based division of labor, which has existed in all societies for thousands of years. In India, it is based on ideology of male domination, caste system, social norms of purity and pollution, which are the highly rated jobs, which are the polluted job. Wherever you deal with the organic matter, those kind of activities, economic activities, are considered to be inferior. It is also based upon the notion that women are physically weaker than men and are not suited for physically arduous work. Women's biological task of monthly menstruation, pregnancy, confine them to subsistence economy, such as lowly paid agricultural work, handicrafts, and also cottage industry and household work. Now, these concepts are very, very important. There are many other concepts in gender economics which will come in due course, but they are very important to understand how gender operates in the process of economic development, and incorporation of subsistence economy into the modern market economies has brought into question the traditional gender-based division of labor as an organizing principle. That means household as an organizing principle has been challenged, and now we have a more office-based, factory-based, location-based work, because women are now separated. Their private and public has been separated. For wage work, you go out to work, and for unpaid household chores, you remain at home. Women end up doing less skilled work and are underpaid or are expected to contribute to survival needs of their family without any corresponding benefit. That means in the subsistence economy. Esther Bosrup, in her pioneering work, brought to the fore African women's crucial contribution towards food security and explained the political economy of polygamy in Africa that allowed man to concentrate and centralize economic resources through unpaid and back-breaking labor of women and children in the subsistence economy that did not have much animal resources or technology for cultivation of land. So, to understand economic basis and functioning of patriarchy and matrilineal societies and structures and systems is also very important work that we have to do in gender economics, because it is very important to come up with the accurate policy, accurate programs, accurate schemes to challenge subordination of women. Now, gender economics has also critiqued the conventional mainstream theories of value, distribution and population. They have been neoclassical analysis based on marginal utility in a consumer analysis, or marginal cost in the product pricing and marginal productivity has come under severe scrutiny in gender economics. In the area of home economics, Nobel laureate Gary Becker's model of competing interest in distribution of resources in the households and the higher opportunity cost of man as a breadwinner and woman as a homemaker is criticized by women's studies scholars as sexist and status quoist. As against that, Amartya Kumar Sen and Martha Nussbaum have put forward a concept of cooperative conflict in the theory of distribution. First of all, there is inequality in terms of resources invested for girls' education and boys' education, food intake of girl and food intake of boy, or opportunities that economy provides, because Amartya Kumar Sen also talks about 7 type of inequalities that women and girls in South Asia face: pre-birth stage, after being born, during childhood, adulthood, within marriage, within property rights, and within the larger economy. You acknowledge that, but this is a cooperative conflict. It is not a war kind of a situation. There is inequality, there is a bargaining, there is a dialogue, there is a pressure from top, like through government policies, there is a pressure from below, and situation changes. Now, feminist reading of economic laws, say of marginal productivity theory or law of maximization from the basic tenets of gender economics is very, very important, because when you talk about maximization, what are we taught in economics? In the very first lecture, we are told that what is economic man? There is no woman in economics. There is always economic man. Who is this economic man? This economic man is a rational man who tries to maximize satisfaction as a consumer and who tries to maximize profit as a producer. Now, this premise itself is being challenged. In the classical economics, the marginal each one is paid according to marginal productivity. It just doesn't take into consideration that why people with the same level of talent, skills and education are paid differentially, because there are so many other institutional factors, they also come in the way. And gender is a very, very important factor that creates, because now even in the government sector, you don't see any parity in wages. Okay, where MG Narega, all the studies of MG Narega are showing that if men and women would be given different jobs so that they are paid differentially. So various ways are found out to give women differential wages. The feminist economists also believe in engendering micro and macroeconomics. That's a very important challenge that this discipline has. Feminist criticism of development indices like modernization, technological development, mechanization, automation, urbanization, industrialization, they are critiqued, because all these processes, if they bypass women, if they don't involve women, that is, they don't take into consideration women's needs and women's demands, then they need re-examining and reorganizing. Now, development debate currently is revolving around gender development and development approach in human development reports of Government of India, in the state development reports, Maharashtra Human Development Report, Human Development Report of Mumbai, Human Development Report of MMRDA. Everywhere gender has become a very important constituent in examining the course of development of the city. Now we are talking about the gender-friendly city. We are talking about the gender-just way of planning and policy. We are talking about gender audit of budgeting. We are talking about gender audit of governance. So this is the crux of gender economics in nutshell. And questions for this unit are: describe importance of concepts in gender economics. It can be a full-length question. What are the reasons for criticism of conventional indicators of development? And what are the alternatives suggested by gender economics? What are the approaches of to women in development? That means women in development, women and development, and gender and development. In terms of short notes, you would be asked to write short note on relevance of women's studies, visibility of statistics and indicators, visibility of women in statistics and indicators, economic basis of functioning of patriarchy, paid and unpaid work of women, and trends in feminism. You can refer to some of the important contributions in this area. The book by Asha Kapoor Mehta is very useful. Devki Jain's articles, Devki Jain and Nirmala Banerjee's book, Tyranny of Household, will be very useful. My book, Women's Challenges of the New Millennium, written in 2002, can be referred to. There are multiple copies of the same in SNDT library. IGNOU has also come out with several books on women and development. Thank you.